Hey guys, it's Gina and welcome back to the Curly Hair Care for Beginners playlist. Today we're going to be covering 3 different ways that I like to refresh my curls. This is one of the biggest challenges with naturally curly hair is trying to preserve your style overnight and prolong your wash and goes. So I am going to take you through how I first styled my hair on day 1, how I refreshed on day 2, day 3, and day 4, and then how I determine when it's time to wash my hair. So let's go ahead and get started. So now let's go through what I originally did when I first styled my hair. If you recognize any of these clips, I did share part of this routine in my previous video all about how to prevent flat roots and the triangle shape. So if you want to check that out for more tips about how to get volume, such as rinsing your hair upside down and some other styling tips, you can check out that video linked down below. But I've already deep conditioned and washed my hair, and I'm just rinsing out that deep conditioner right now and then running my fingers through and then just kind of blotting it dry a little bit with my hair repair towel. Then I'm using the DevaCurl Frizz-Free Volumizing Foam just at my roots. I normally don't do this step, and I actually don't recommend applying a lot of product to your roots, especially if you're trying to prolong your style. But for this routine, I was trying to really show some ways of getting a lot of volume at the root. That's why I did decide to use this product for this routine. So now moving on to the DevaCurl Be Leave-In. This is one of my favorite products because it helps clump your curls together and helps give them volume and just give you those chunkier ringlets. So I'm just applying this all over my hair, and I am applying my products upside down again just to help with volume. Now time for curl cream. I'm using the DevaCurl Styling Cream, and this is a really great all-around moisturizing cream in the wintertime. If I'm going to be using stronghold products like gels, I like to start off with a cream or a leave-in conditioner underneath first just to make sure I have enough moisture. Then I'm just taking my Denman brush and combing that product all the way through and just smoothing down some curls, and this is starting to form some curl clumps. Then I just run my fingers through to just help break up some of those curls, and now I'm ready for gel. For the gel today, I'm going to be using the Ouidad Advanced Climate Control Stronger Hold Gel. I'm actually applying quite a bit of this product. I like using a stronghold gel like this to extend my style to where I don't have to do a whole lot when I'm refreshing, and this gel just does excellent at keeping your style in for a long time. Even though it's wintertime right now, I still like using this product that is designed for humidity because it really helps lock in the moisture and keep it from escaping in the dry winter air, and helps keep my hair lasting a long time. So I'm just raking this all throughout my hair, and then I'm also going to scrunch, and we're going to apply another layer in just a minute just to make sure that we have some good strong hold in there to help last us throughout the week. If you don't top your hair off with something like a gel or a mousse, it's not going to hold up with just using a cream. It's just going to get frizzy and tangled and stuff and not be very manageable on day 2. Now to just further define some curls, I'm just taking my Denman brush and just smoothing over some random pieces along my hairline and around my part, and this just helps give me really good definition while still keeping that volume underneath. Then I'm going to plait my hair for about 20 or 30 minutes, so I'm just putting my hair up in my hair repair towel. I have a video about how to do this if you want to see how to tie your hair up, but it helps just kind of absorb excess water and lets it sit a little bit before we're ready to diffuse. So after about 20 minutes, I did take my hair down, and this is when I'm going to apply just another small layer of this gel, mostly to my ends and around the crown area where I tend to get frizzy. Adding in this second layer is just really going to lock everything in and help give you a good gel cast to where it will protect your hair from frizzing up while you're diffusing. So now it's time to diffuse. I am going to flip my head over and diffuse my hair on warm air and then also cold air at the end. So these are the final results after my hair is completely dry. It's a little bit flat, so I do want to fluff out my roots, so I just place my hands right at my roots and give them a shake. This is just going to help give me some more volume. However, if you're going to be going straight to bed, I would not do this step just yet, and I would not scrunch out the crunch yet. I would go to sleep in your hair like this with that really strong hold. I highly recommend wearing your hair up in a satin bonnet. It makes a world of difference. That's how I like to sleep in my hair because it keeps my hair up off my neck, keeps it from tangling up, and keeps the style in place, and I have really good volume when I take it down the next day. So now it's the next morning. I've already done my makeup, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to refresh my hair. I'm taking my hair down out of the satin bonnet, and you can see after I shake out my roots how my hair looks the next day. It pretty much looks like it did the day before. So I did style my hair sort of in the evening at night before, so it hasn't had a whole lot of time in between from when I went to bed and then slept on it. I'm just shaking out my roots just because sometimes it can get stuck down to your head when it's up in the bonnet. And I also like how the bonnet helps kind of hold all of my curls in place, so it kind of helps shrink them up too and keep them from hanging down too stringy. But I'm just kind of going around and situating my hair, and I'm looking at where I might need to refresh a little bit. I do have just a tiny bit of frizz in some areas, but overall it looks really great. I usually don't have this good results the next day unless if I use a stronghold gel like I did with the Ouidad one. So this gel is definitely my go-to when I'm going to be traveling and I don't want to have to do a whole lot of refreshing. I always go with something like this. So because it still pretty much looks great, but I just have a couple minor areas to touch up, I want to make sure it's going to last all day. So all I'm going to do is just add a little bit of water to my hands and then smooth over individual curls that are looking a little bit frizzy or ones that might lost their shape when they were up in the satin bonnet. Sometimes some curls can get like kinked in a funny way, or maybe they're not curling up just like the other ones. So I just use a little bit of water on my fingers to help reactivate that product. This is one of the few styling products that I have that I can just add water to, and I end up with a little bit of a gel cast back in. Another tip for refreshing some curls that just don't want to curl up is after you smooth over them, then just wrap them around your finger and you can just finger coil some of the ones. Hopefully you can just leave it at that and you don't have to diffuse, but if you notice some of your ends are hanging down longer than the rest and they look stringy, then I would hit them just for a little bit with the diffuser, just a little bit of warm air to help set them in place and prevent them from hanging down too long. And that's really the biggest issue that I usually have with next day hair, is just it looking stringy. So hopefully this little tip helps. If you do need to add a little bit of the gel to your hair, you can, but I like to hold off as long as possible before adding product, just so I'm not adding too much product and layering up too much, because if you have fine hair like mine, it can really get weighed down for next day hair. So if I can get away with just using some water on day one, then that's what I try to do. So as you can see, now that I'm done diffusing, the ends look much better and look all one length. So if you struggle with stringy ends, then I definitely recommend just diffusing them a little bit when they're wet. I like keeping my head upright just so I don't get too much frizz instead of flipping my head over like I do on wash day. So these are my final results. I think it looks pretty good for day 2 hair. This is usually my favorite day in terms of refreshing my hair because I have just the right amount of hold and I can kind of create some volume too with second day hair. Okay, now it's time for day 3. So I'm taking my hair down out of my bonnet. You can see how the bonnet really helps just gather all your hair up to the top, which helps with curl definition and helps prevent curls from losing their shape. So I'm just kind of shaking out my roots. I'm also going to flip my head over, and I'm really just trying to separate the hair away from my scalp because sometimes it gets mashed down when you're sleeping and when it's up in the satin bonnet. So I'm just kind of looking over my hair and trying to see where I still need to refresh. If you look closely, it's starting to get a little bit matted, especially on this side, like underneath my ear and around my collar, and that's just from like jackets and sweaters and stuff, especially in the winter time. But overall, it still feels really good, and overall I have really great curl definition still, but I am going to just detangle a little bit, so I'm just adding some water to my hands. And for this method, I'm going to gently detangle but also smooth frizz, but I'm not going to actually pull my fingers through my hair on the top layer. I'm just going to kind of clasp my hands over my whole head and then just kind of pull down the strand. So I'm really trying to not disturb the curl pattern because I like the curl definition that I have, but I do need to gently detangle and especially detangle a little bit underneath. On the underside layer, I'm not quite as worried about disturbing that curl pattern, so I'm just going to fully detangle on the underside layer to try to get rid of some of those knots underneath, because if I leave them, they will get worse throughout the day and I don't want to end up with bigger knots at the bottom. So I am kind of raking my fingers through gently. I don't have anything on my hands but water, but if you needed more moisture to do this and if you needed more slip, I would recommend adding a little bit of leave-in conditioner, or you could go in with some of the styling cream that we used on day 1. I like keeping the products the same. I don't necessarily like adding in new products, just to prevent my hair from getting too much product buildup when refreshing. So now I am going to add a little bit more gel. I'm using a diluted version of the gel, so I'm just applying maybe a dime size amount to my palm and then adding in a little bit of water, or just having my hands being wet just helps to kind of dilute it a little bit. This helps, like I said, just prevent too much product from building up. We already have product in our hair, and I probably could just diffuse with my hair the way that it is, but I know I might end up with some frizz at this point because I did wet it down a little bit more. So the more that you wet your hair down, you might actually be removing some product from before, so you might have to add a little bit more in at this point. And again, I'm just smoothing that product over the surface of my hair, and I'm not necessarily pulling my fingers through my hair because that's going to disturb the curl pattern that we currently have. Now with a little bit of water and a little gel on my hand, I'm just scrunching the ends up a little bit. Now I'm just going to do the same on the other side, and I'm applying even less product over here because I have less hair on this side. Then on the back area, I'm just making sure the crown area is good and detangled, and now we're ready to diffuse. So since my hair is a little bit more wet this day, I do have to do a little bit longer diffusing. I do flip my head over for this just so I can see all of my ends and make sure that they're all gathered up in the diffuser, because it is going to dry a lot faster than it typically does when you're like washing your hair from day one. So I do like to make sure that all the hair is gathered up in the diffuser, because if it starts to dry when the hair is not all gathered up, I will end up with stringy ends. So that's another tip if you struggle with stringy ends, is just gather all of your hair and make sure that there's not some hair that's still sticking out, because that might end up still getting dry from the air around it, and that will dry and set in place when it's not being captured up in that diffuser, which is helping to shrink the hair up. So these are my final results. After everything is 100% dry, I do like to shake out some of the crunch and then just give myself some volume by shaking out my roots. Or you could totally just leave it like this. If it is going to be humid outside, then you would want to leave some of that crunch in just so it naturally falls throughout the day. So now we're on to day 4, and when taking my hair down, I could definitely tell that it was a lot more frizzy and my ends were starting to get dry. And so I'm going to do a little bit more refreshing. This is probably the most refreshing that I'll have to do before I actually wash my hair. So I wanted to be able to show you guys all the techniques. You can see how frizzy my ends are. So I'm going to show you some ways that you can add some moisture back and then some hold. So I'm first going to wet my hands down as I have been doing, and then start to gently detangle the ends. And I started to notice after trying to detangle the underside layer that was really bad, that I definitely needed to add some more curl cream. You can also use a leave-in conditioner if you want to use something a little bit lighter than a curl cream, but I just added a tiny bit. I also have water on my hand, so it does dilute it a little bit, and that just gives me a little bit of slip to where I can actually detangle my ends. And if you'll notice, when I detangle, I'm not actually starting at my root in detangling, I'm just detangling the ends, so I'm not really fully pulling my fingers through from my root all the way down to the ends. And you want to be really gentle when you do this too, because you don't want to cause any breakage. A lot of times breakage happens when you are refreshing because you're kind of tugging at your hair and trying to detangle and stuff, so you just want to be really gentle with it when it's wet. Another little tip, if you want to just refresh the smell and add some volume at the root, you can use the DevaCurl Diva Fresh. This is sort of like a scalp refresher, so if you do like to work out, or if you find that your scalp is sweaty, or you just want to help with some of the smell from oil, you can spritz some of this on your scalp. It has some really nourishing oils in it and stuff that help refresh your hair. So one of my biggest tips when refreshing and trying to redefine curls is using a Denman brush. I like to just pick up some curls that are looking limp, or some that are really tangly, or some that have a lot of frizz, and you want to make sure your hair is already detangled. So I would pick up the strand, make sure it's good and detangled with your fingers, and then go over it with the Denman brush. This just helps smooth all of the frizz down. It helps clump your curls back together, especially after detangling. They can get separated. Gives really great ringlets, and it's a great way to just refresh your hair and make sure everything is frizz free. So like I said, make sure everything's detangled first though, because the Denman brush is not great at detangling. It's mostly used for defining curls. This is also a really great way to kind of smooth frizzy ends. Sometimes I will just gather all my ends together and go over them with the Denman brush at once, and then just give it a good scrunch to make sure everything shrinks right back up. You can also use the Denman brush to create volume right at your roots, so you can place the brush a little bit closer to your roots, angle it straight up and back, and it's a great way to give volume at the crown. So if you find that your hair is getting too weighed down from adding additional product by day 4, you can take a cotton t-shirt or the hair repair towel like I'm using, and I'm just pressing my ends up to my scalp. I'm not squeezing my hair when I'm scrunching or anything, because that can just create frizz. I'm just gently pressing it upwards, and that's just going to help absorb any excess moisture, because we have added a little bit of extra water, and I don't want to spend forever diffusing, so this is a great way to just soak up some of that water before I diffuse. After scrunching out some of the excess water, I did go in with a little bit more gel on my hands and just added it to areas that were looking frizzy to me, like my ends and stuff, but I didn't want to add too much because we already have gel from the previous days. So now I'm going to diffuse my hair in the same way. I just like to flip it over for some added volume and diffuse my ends first. Then I like to flip it right side up and then just go on the underside layer, and this really helps shrink up that underside layer that tends to hang down and get stringy for me. Then I like to place the diffuser right at my roots and give it a lift. This is going to help give volume to my roots and prevent it from hanging down too flat. This only really works though if your roots are wet, so you can add more of that Diva Fresh, or you can just spritz some water directly on your roots and then use the diffuser to give you some volume. So you can see the difference that it made. I have a nice arch there at my roots versus it just laying flat, because my hair is starting to get oily by day 4, which can cause it to look really flat. So this method definitely helps give me more volume. Now that my hair is 100% dry, I can go ahead and shake out my roots, and I'm also scrunching out the crunch, but you want to make sure your hands are completely dry when you do this. You don't want to cause any frizz. I'm just trying to break up some of that gel cast to give me some more volume, or you could leave it in if you like a really strong hold. Alright guys, so I wanted to hop on because this is probably the last day that I'm going to check in. So I washed late Tuesday night and now it is Saturday morning, and I don't plan on going anywhere today, so I'll probably just put my hair up in a bun and not refresh or anything. But I wanted to show you the texture that it is now, so it's definitely ready to be washed. It's really hard to see frizz sometimes on camera, but if I get up close, and hopefully you can see since I have the brightness up, but you can see I do have quite a bit of frizz, and it's really getting way down at my roots, if you can see how flat my roots look. And I also go off of how my hair feels. Like, it's starting to get pretty tangled underneath, as you can see. It's starting to look tangled, and it's starting to feel a little bit dry on the ends, and my roots are starting to get a little bit oily, I would say. This is why I usually go 3 to 4 days in between my washes, because this is how my hair starts to get by day 3 or 4. So that is it for this full week of refreshing. Let me know if you have any questions regarding refreshing, and I'm also going to put some tips on how to avoid having a bad hair day on the blog post that goes with this video, and I will also link you to any products that I use. Just click the first link in the description box down below, head over to my blog. You'll see more tips over there about how to preserve your curls at night and how to make sure that your hair does not turn out bad the next day. I have another video that I did very similar to this, but it was using a mousse, so if you want to see that, then I will link that down below as well, where I took you through a full week of refreshing. And don't forget to subscribe if you have not already, and I hope to see you back next week. Bye everyone.